Sometimes the biggest headaches in your home are the ones you can't even see. They're hiding behind the walls, lurking under the floorboards, and creeping through your air vents. Today, we're going to lift the lid on one of these invisible intruders as we dive into the world of professional mold inspection.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to start with why certain climates are just perfect for mold. Then we'll get into the warning signs you need to look out for, break down the actual inspection process, and then cover how the science works. We'll wrap up with two really important pieces: how to read your report and, crucially, how to pick an expert you can actually trust. All right, first things first, let's set the scene. To really get a handle on this problem, you've got to understand the environment that fuels it. We're going to look at why a climate like you'd find in South Florida is basically a 5-star resort for mold.
So how can a place that's famous for beautiful sunshine be such a hotspot for mold? Well, it's pretty simple, really. It's a perfect storm of year-round humidity, some seriously heavy rain, and warm temperatures. That combination is a recipe for trapping moisture inside your house, giving mold exactly what it needs to thrive, totally out of sight.
And listen, it's not always about some catastrophic flood. More often than not, it's the little things, the everyday problems that get you. A backed-up AC line, a tiny roof leak you didn't notice after a storm, or even just some condensation on a window. These are the subtle culprits that are secretly feeding a hidden mold problem.
Okay, so we know what causes it. Now let's talk about the effects. What are the clues? What are the little signals your home might be sending you that there's a problem hiding just out of view? Your own senses are actually your first and best line of defense. That persistent, musty, kind of earthy smell, that's a classic. So are water stains you see on the ceiling, even if they look old and dry. But here's a big one. Pay attention to how you feel. If your allergies or asthma seem to magically clear up every time you leave the house, well, that is a huge red flag that something's up with your indoor air. So, let's say you've noticed one of those signs. What happens next? Let's break down what a professional inspection is really all about. This isn't just a guy walking around and guessing. It's a full-on, systematic investigation.
The whole thing is actually a pretty straightforward journey that takes you from feeling uncertain to having a totally clear action plan. It just starts with a phone call to book it, then comes the detailed on-site inspection, and it all ends with a report that tells you exactly what's going on.
This is where the cool tech comes in. A pro inspection goes way beyond what you can see with your own eyes. They use tools like moisture meters to literally find dampness inside your walls, and thermal imaging cameras that can spot temperature differences that signal a hidden leak. We're talking about stuff the naked eye would totally miss.
Now, the visual check and the moisture readings, they tell you a huge part of the story. But to get the full picture, especially about what's floating around in the air you're breathing, you need hard data. And that, my friends, is where the science comes in.
So professionals use a few different methods to collect all the evidence. They'll take air samples to see what kind of spores are airborne. They'll swab any gunk they can see to identify it. But here's the crucial part. They take an outdoor sample too. That outdoor sample is the baseline, right? It's the control group. And it lets them see if the spore levels inside your home are way higher than what's naturally outside. One of the big villains inspectors are on the lookout for is Stachybotrys. You probably know it as black mold. The reason it's so infamous is because it can create these things called mycotoxins. They're basically nasty little toxic compounds that can cause some pretty serious health problems. It absolutely loves to feast on stuff that's been wet for a long time, like soaked drywall. Next up, we've got Aspergillus. Now, this one's a little tricky because it is incredibly common. It could be hanging out in your AC system, your insulation, or even just in everyday dust. For most of us, it's no big deal. But if you've got allergies or a compromised immune system, it can be a real troublemaker. And last but not least, Penicillium. And yeah, this is the mold that gave us the miracle of antibiotics, but trust me, you do not want it growing in your house. It loves damp wallpaper and carpets, and it is a notorious trigger for anyone who struggles with asthma or sinus infections. So after the inspection is done and the lab sends back its results, all that data gets put into a final report. This is the moment of truth. Let's take a look at how a good report translates all that science into answers you can actually understand. A good report isn't just going to throw a bunch of complicated scientific names and numbers at you. It interprets them for you. It'll tell you exactly what types of mold are found, it'll confirm if any of them are the toxic kind, and most importantly, it'll compare your indoor spore count to that outdoor baseline we talked about. That comparison is everything. It tells you if you have a real problem that needs to be dealt with.
Okay, so here's the crucial point. None of this information is any good unless it's accurate and completely unbiased. And that brings us to our final and maybe most important section. How do you choose a professional you can actually trust? And this right here, this illustrates the single most important rule you need to know, the separation of church and state, so to speak. A good inspector's only job is to investigate and give you the facts. They don't do the cleanup. This is huge because it avoids a major conflict of interest. They have zero incentive to find a problem just so they can sell you a super expensive cleanup job.
So here you go. This is your checklist. This is what you look for. They have to be state licensed and certified. They absolutely must be independent, meaning they only do inspections, no remediation. They should be using that advanced tech we talked about, and of course, they need to have great local reviews and a solid track record.
You know, when you see a professional company like this, it's not just about a slick logo or a nice van. It really signals a certain level of legitimacy and accountability. It's a sign that you're dealing with an established, licensed, and insured business that's dedicated to giving you an expert, unbiased assessment.
In the end, it all just boils down to this one simple promise. The whole point of getting a mold assessment is to get clarity, to get an honest, accurate evaluation of your home's health so you can make the right decisions to protect your property and, more importantly, your family.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Now that you know the hidden triggers, the warning signs, and the science behind a proper inspection, it's worth asking yourself, is the air inside my home really as clean and healthy as I assume it is? Because being proactive is the only way to know for sure.